Welcome to the Shady Homestead. On this channel, I teach you how to simplify your life in order to increase its quality. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the supplies you need to get started getting into maple syrup. I'm going to share with you what you need to harvest the maple syrup, the sap from the tree like this one, and then what you need to cook or boil down your maple syrup. All of these supplies are affordable, practical, and you probably have many of them already. You'll see how easy it is in just a minute. Stay tuned. Obviously you need maple trees. So if you have any kind of maple tree like this one right here, and even this massive one right here, you can start harvesting your own maple syrup. This is a backyard operation, small scale. What we do here on this property is we harvest enough maple syrup for us to get us from this year to next year when we start harvesting again. So let's talk about harvesting the maple sap. You're gonna need spiles. This is what a spile looks like. These spiles right here are the absolute best in my opinion. They're solid, they're not going to break, they're gonna last you the rest of your life if you take care of them. This package right here is about $15 for 6 of them, and that's all you need to get started. Next on the list is gonna be this cordless drill. Chances are you have a cordless drill anyway. You don't just want a cordless drill, you need a bit that goes inside your cordless drill like this one. It's very sharp, it works extremely well for drilling into the tree, which is what you need to do, and it has to be 7/16 inch drill bit. That's the standard size. In order to put the spiles into the tree, you're just going to need a regular household hammer. You probably have a hammer as well, so as far as an additional expense, there's a good chance you don't need to go to the store to buy one of these. You can see on the end of this a little area where you're going to actually tap it in with the hammer. Then with this basic backyard small scale setup, the next thing you're going to need is a bucket. What I use are 5-gallon buckets. These are food grade buckets I found for very, very cheap. This woman happened to have a whole bunch of them that she was selling for only $2 a piece. It was super cheap, and they came with lids. You're going to need lids for this because you're going to want to cover the sap after you harvest it from the tree. So with the stuff I just shared with you, I did a rough estimate of what I paid for this equipment. It cost me $155 total. That's mostly because of the drill. A standard drill is going to cost you about $100 with the batteries, unless you buy a really cheap one. But the good news is most of you have a drill, most of you have a hammer. What you would need to buy just to get sap from the tree, just extracting it out of the tree, the harvesting stage, is probably some buckets, probably the spiles, and that's it because you most likely have the hammer and the drill already. So with the buckets, it's my recommendation that you have twice as many buckets as spiles. If you purchase 6 spiles, you're going to want to have about 12 buckets. Because if you have 6 buckets on the trees and you're harvesting the maple syrup, once it gets full, you're going to want to swap it out for an empty bucket to keep collecting maple syrup. So you can have a whole bunch of buckets, but you don't need to have a whole bunch of spiles as long as it keeps running. And that way you can fill up multiple buckets at one time, store them in a shady area to keep them cold until you're ready to actually boil down the sap to turn into maple syrup. Another little tip with those plastic buckets to put the sap in when you harvest it. First of all, you don't absolutely have to use food grade buckets. The first time I did this, I just used regular 5-gallon buckets. I was fine. I didn't worry about getting food grade. But if that concerns you, if you really want food grade buckets, what I recommend you doing is going to a local bakery shop or a bakery shop within a grocery store and ask them if they have frosting buckets. And they can't give those things away fast enough a lot because once they use them once, they just end up recycling them. So if you go there, there's a good chance they're just going to want to get rid of them and give them to you for very, very cheap. It's 4 gallons instead of 5, but it doesn't really matter. You'll just need to use more buckets for storage. But the fact is, you can get them cheap instead of having to pay for food grade buckets. Let's talk about how you boil the sap into delicious maple syrup. This is what we're here for, right? This is why we do this. And I think that it's even simpler than you've probably been told before. So the first thing you're going to want to get, in my opinion, are stainless steel pans. This pan right here is 12 inches wide, 6 inches deep, and 20 inches long. I have 3 of these, so it makes it a lot easier to boil sap and to manage your burn as you're boiling these on top of an open fire. For all 3 of these pans, I paid about $100. This is the most expensive thing that you're probably going to purchase. I would recommend going to a restaurant that's got kind of a buffet style. If you go there and ask if they have any old pans for sale, there might be a good chance they'll just give them to you, or there might be a good chance that you can get them for a very, very low cost. You can look for used steam tray pans on Facebook Marketplace, or maybe even Craigslist as well. It's a good idea to start looking early, like in December or January perhaps, well before maple syrup season even starts. So at some point within your boiling sap process, you're going to want to filter your maple syrup. Some people use a filter 2, 3, 4 times throughout the process. I just use it once and I've never really had anything go wrong. The other thing you're going to want to do for this is to have cinder blocks. It takes about 10 cinder blocks to make an outdoor wood cooker. And the beautiful thing about cinder blocks, besides the fact that they're readily available almost anywhere and they're cheap, is that you can form them to any shape pan you want. And then after you're done boiling that season, you can take the blocks and put them somewhere else if you don't want them in your yard or wherever you happen to boil sap. Depending on how many pans you use and the size of your cooking area, you're going to need more cinder blocks. You can usually get them for $1.50 to $2 a piece at your local hardware store, Home Depot, big box store like Lowe's, places like that. I said you need the pans, you need some cinder blocks. You're also going to need some firewood. And that can get expensive. Do not go to places like gas stations that sell bundles of firewood for $7 or $8. So when it comes to firewood, there's really endless options out there. I've even heard of people that harvest firewood from public land. They go to their local DNR office, they get a permit. Here in Wisconsin, I believe it's $15 the last time I checked, and they can legally harvest any fallen timber on public land. It could be an option for you. One thing that I did last summer, thinking ahead to this maple syrup season, is that a couple tornadoes went through the state of Wisconsin. One in particular was fairly close to where I live. And what I did was I went to people's homes and harvested the wood that had fallen down, the trees that fell over. A lot of this was like pine and aspen, softer wood. The beautiful part of that is I got the wood for free. It's wood you normally wouldn't burn inside your home like we do. We prefer maple and oak and cherry, I suppose. But most of that wood, like aspen and pine, is perfect for an outdoor fire pit. It's perfect for boiling maple syrup. That's what I would recommend. Don't buy expensive red oak or white oak firewood that's been split, stacked, and seasoned for a couple years to burn outside for maple syrup. But you want to burn cheap wood that's inexpensive and easy to get. Wood that people would not burn in their homes normally. The next item I'm going to talk to you about are these grilling gloves. Gloves that you use to take things out of the oven, like oven mitts, those will work too. But I recommend grilling gloves because it gives you the ability to grab these pans off of the hot fire and set them back on or go back and forth. If your sap starts boiling to the point where it's boiling over, you need to remove it from the heat as fast as you can. This gives you the opportunity to do that. These also give you the opportunity to put firewood in safely without burning your hands. Sometimes you have to reach far underneath these pans to stoke that fire and get it going, and you want to be comfortable doing that. That's where oven mitts wouldn't really work very well because these are made for being in close contact with fire and coals. So these are a must-have in my opinion. This next item is something I think people don't often think about. You're going to want to use a kitchen ladle. Kitchen ladles are extremely important. Right now, I'm just using this plastic one from the kitchen, but if you can find a longer one, stainless steel, with a deep cup here, where you can transfer maple syrup and sap from one pan to the next. The idea is that one of the 3 pans is heating up the maple syrup, or the sap I should say. The other 2 are cooking it down, and you need to transfer that sap to the hotter of the 3 pans. Otherwise, you're taking one pan and tipping it in to get the sap from one pan to the next, and you could spill or you could burn your hands or just make a mess in general. So the best way to do it, in my opinion, is to use a ladle like this. But like I said, use a stainless steel one that's long if you can find it. Once you're to the point where you think the sap has been boiled down, most of it, remember it's a 40-to-1 ratio most of the time, 40 gallons of sap for 1 gallon of maple syrup, sometimes as much as 45 or 50. But when you get to the point where you think you're getting pretty close to actually having maple syrup rather than sap, you're going to need a hydrometer or a thermometer. I use this simple meat thermometer. This is what I use to check to see if my chicken is done. This is what I use to check to see what temperature the maple syrup is at. I prefer a meat thermometer over a hydrometer because it gives a more accurate read. This is a digital thermometer that's going to tell me exactly the temperature of the maple syrup. And how I know it's done is because when I put this into the maple syrup, I'll dip this into the pan. And once that temperature says 219.5 degrees Fahrenheit, I know it's a very specific number, but once it gets to that, I immediately remove the pans from the open fire, and that's how I know I've got the perfect temperature for maple syrup. It's the best consistency as far as I'm concerned. In my experience, this is the perfect size. Now you can use pints if you want, but you need some type of glass jar to put it in to preserve the maple syrup that you work so hard to get for the upcoming year until you harvest again next year. Don't forget about getting the right size lid for your jar and making sure that your rings fit tightly and snug and are not rusted before you put them on. So the total cost to boil the sap and make it into maple syrup is about $180 with the equipment I just shared with you. Most of that will be the pans. Maple syrup pans will last you a lifetime if you get really strong gauge stainless steel pans. If you did not have the pans, it would just be about $80 to actually have a good full setup. Let's say you already have the pans, or let's say you get them for free. That's going to cut a lot of costs out of the $180. If you take the actual harvesting process of taking the sap from the tree and harvest it, then the boiling process like we just discussed, and you add them together, we're about $335 to $350 with that equipment. That sounds shocking to get started, but the beautiful part of this whole process is every single thing we talked about today you can use for the rest of your life if you take care of it. Glass jars last forever. Stainless steel pans last forever. You take care of your cordless drill, it lasts a long time. Your hammer, why would that not last your entire life if you take good care of it? It might be a $300 to $350 startup cost, but you're going to use this the rest of your life. There are stainless steel pans alone that cost $300 to $500 just for the pan, not to mention the drill, the bit, the gloves, the ladle, all of that extra stuff we talked about. That's all extra in addition to the pan. Now, I did not add the firewood cost into the $335 total cost that we just talked about. That's because a lot of you, if you have a homestead already, you're harvesting your own wood for free. So if you remove the cordless drill, which you probably already have, and the hammer, and the canning jars, maybe you've got some grilling gloves, maybe you have some of these things already. If you remove all of that, you're going to go from about $335 down to maybe $100 or less. I do have some bonus items I want to share with you just to make your life a lot easier. Bonus item number one is this canning funnel. You're going to want a canning funnel because maple syrup and sap gets messy. It gets sticky, as you know. If you have a regular jar like this, using this makes your life so much easier. You're not going to make a mess like you would anyway, and this thing probably costs between $1 and $2 at the store. The next item you're going to want to have on your homestead for the maple syrup process is some kind of sled. I use an otter sled because I like to haul firewood, I like to go fishing, I like to put my daughter in it, pull her around the yard, but I also use it for pulling the buckets of sap around the yard as long as there's snow on the ground. If there isn't snow on the ground, I will then use a heavy-duty little trailer that I can pull by hand with my lawnmower in the summer, with the four-wheeler. I've even pulled deer out of the woods with it, and it works really well for putting sap because you don't want to be carrying 5 gallons of sap around your yard or through your woods. It's just going to be uncomfortable and you're going to get sore after a while. Remember, the goal of the Shady Homestead channel is to teach you how to live simply, to increase the quality of your life, to live within your means, and to use what you have to the best of your ability. If you love hunting and you love fishing, feel free to check out my other YouTube channel, the Relentless Sportsman channel. And if you have a homestead or like the idea of homesteading and you're thinking about going in that direction, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and share our information with other people on your social media. Thanks for watching the Shady Homestead YouTube channel. If you learned something new, make sure you stick around for another video coming up really soon. And always remember, simplify your life to increase its quality. I'll see you next time.